and welcome to Module 2, History, Perspectives in Psychological Science. Here are your learning objectives, and here's your vocab. Remember to pause to write things down. So let's start with the basics. What is psychology? So psychology is a scientific study of behavior and mental processes. So make sure you remember those key words when you're trying to remember what is psychology. It is scientific, it uses research, and what is that research looking at? It's looking at the way people behave and the way people think. So there are two types of research. The first is basic. This is where psychologists would be conducting research. This is where they are exploring, making hypotheses, and learning new information. Applied research is where we take that basic research knowledge and we use it to help. Could be to help an individual, could be to help society in general. So, for example, reducing apathy in bystanders. Like, how do we get people to react when there's a crisis? If there's a lot of people around, people are less likely to react. How do we get them to react? So you would use research experimentation and then apply those findings in real life. So how did psychology all get started? So psychology is a newer field. When you think about the other subjects that you study, psychology is a very new field in that regard. It's only been around truly in a scientific way for 150 years. Now, before that, yes, we can go back to ancient philosophers who had many ideas and theories about our brains and about behavior, but it was more philosophical and it was not scientifically based. So Wilhelm Wundt, who is a German physiologist, he is the father of this modern psychology. He founded the first psychology lab in 1879, and he used experiments to study human consciousness. So he is considered the father of psychology. Whenever there's a question about Wilhelm Wundt, it's generally, who is the father of modern day psychology? It's him, Wilhelm Wundt. So William James, he learned from Wilhelm Wundt, and he created the textbook for psychology. So he is, all right. There we go. So in psychology, after it was born, there were 6 different perspectives that basically came out of it. Now, we don't use all of these perspectives individually to study psychology. We use all of them together. So we're going to go through these 6, but all 6 have a common theme. They can be basically boiled down to like one key word to help you remember them. But they are like a lens that we look through to interpret what we are seeing. This will make sense once I start explaining. So Sigmund Freud started the psychoanalytic perspective. So this was really the first perspective. It's the oldest perspective. And this is the idea of using therapeutic techniques and the theory of personality that he created to understand our thoughts and our actions. So personality styles and our unconscious motives. So why did we just punch someone in the face? Our conscious doesn't even know the answer. It is in our unconscious. And that is usually with Freud driven by something that happened in childhood. The problem with this perspective is that it focuses on the unconscious and how do you scientifically measure the unconscious. So if Freud says, oh, well, you punched that person because they're a man and you had problems with your father growing up. Okay, he would say something like that. Like, did you ever fight with your father? This is the reason why. That's why you did it. How can you prove him wrong? There's no way to prove psychodynamic and psychoanalytic. Psychodynamic's just the modern day name for it. There's no way to prove it wrong. So it's not very science. It kind of moved away from science. That caused a reaction of the behavioral perspective. So Ivan Pavlov, who was actually not a psychologist at all, he was a Russian physiologist. He, by way of accident, studying animals' behaviors with eating, he discovered that people can be conditioned to do things, dogs, humans, all of us. And so behaviorists really focused on observable things. It has to be measured. If you can't measure it, like your unconscious thoughts, then it's not useful in psychology. That's the behavioral perspective. So John B. Watson took this idea from Pavlov and really he's really the Pavlov was had the first idea for behavioral perspective, but Watson really solidified and created it in a psychological mindset. So he said, all behavior is learned. Everything we do is learned. The way that you walk, the way that you decide to dress, the way that you raise your hand in class, it's all learned. Some of it's learned consciously, some of it's learned you don't even realize you're learning it. So he brought back the science aspect of it because you can measure and you can observe people's behaviors. So that's the key word with behavioral, that it's something that we have learned. So we're always looking through that lens with behavior. We learn things. We learn when we see something, we can respond to it this way, right? They use Skinner uses the rat in a box, and it's if they push a button, they get a treat. They did it with a pigeon. If the pigeon pecks the button, they get a treat. So if I do this behavior, I have this consequence. So, I like that, I'll do it again. The humanistic perspective, the key word here is growth. So think of an acorn growing into a tree. Humanists believe that we are all like that acorn if you give us the right conditions. And I know you've probably heard of Maslow before, and he is one of the founding guys for the humanist perspective. And they said, if you give a human all of these things that they need, so with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for example, that would start with food, water, and air. Then give them safety, security, belongingness. If you fulfill those needs, they will grow into what they are supposed to be, or self-actualize, as he called it. So the humanistic perspective sees people as striving to be their best and able to do so if they're given the right circumstances. So it's all about growing as a person. If we don't have those needs met, that's where problems arise. The biological perspective focuses on exactly what it sounds like. This one's really straightforward. So the key word here is just biological. If we're looking at why did someone punch someone, we would go back and we would say something biological. If we're looking through this lens, we would say perhaps hormones, the temperature of the room. We're going to talk about aggression, and there's a correlation there between very hot temperatures and aggressive behaviors. So that's a biological reaction, and that's what the biological perspective would focus on. The cognitive perspective, also really straightforward. It would focus on the way we think. So everything that we think, everything that we do, it all comes down to decisions that we cognitively make. So we weigh the pros and cons. We think about it. Do I want to raise my hand? Do I not want to raise my hand? Do I want to take that course? Do I not want to take that course? Do I want to do my homework right now? That is the cognitive perspective, that we're thinking and those decisions are leading to behaviors and other thoughts. Sociocultural perspective is the focus on society. So all of our mental processes and behaviors result from the influence of society. So seeing images of people dyeing their hair blue might influence us to dye our hair blue, or family beliefs, or religious beliefs, or generational beliefs. those all have an impact on how we think and how we behave. So what do current psychologists think? So current psychologists kind of blend all of these together, and that is called the BioPsychosocial Model of health. That's an important word. Biopsychosocial. I don't think it's a vocab word, but it's very important. I would write it down. And that's really where all of those perspectives come and blend, because we know that why someone might punch someone in the dining hall isn't because it's just a biological reaction. It's not just hormones. It's not just the temperature, right? There might be sociocultural influences there. There might be humanistic influences there, right? Like maybe the person isn't getting something that they need. Freud would probably say there's a lot of childhood things that are being brought up in this issue causing this behavior. So it's a blending of all of those things together. Biopsychosocial. All right, so we always end with takeaways. So our takeaways here is the biopsychosocial model is important, and it gives 3 main levels of analysis to our thoughts and behaviors. Each of those 6 perspectives we just went over adds a key element to our understanding of the way we think and the way we behave. And all of these are going to come up many times throughout this course. So make sure you go back, pause, rewind, and watch again. I'll see you in class.